Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here, and we are 18 weeks through the 2025-26 NBA season. We are right into March now. There are stories hotting up everywhere across the league. The contenders are starting to rise to the top. Those that feel they're probably not there are starting to settle, and those that certainly aren't there have begun to fall by the wayside in, some would suggest, some dramatic fashion indeed. But there's still plenty happening around the league. Imminent returns, battles at the top of the conference, interesting potential playoff matchups. This is where things start to really heat up, and this is where the season starts to get very, very interesting. So let's take a look at it. Let's check out Week 18, my review for Week 18 for the 25-26 NBA season. Starting with the Atlanta Hawks, they have re-established themselves above 500 with a 3-0 record on the week. First time they've been above 500 in a number of weeks. They're still sitting 10th in the East. That's how much it has hotted up over there. You have to be well and truly in the 500 to be even competing for playoff contention there, which is why I said most of the league, if you're 10 games below 500, it is definitely done for the year. Onyeka Okongwu has been massive. He's been very consistent all year, but he was massive this week. 18.7 points, 9.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, but it's the 2 steals and 2 blocks a game. Getting it done on the defensive end, really adding a presence there, something that Atlanta have needed over the last few months. Only the 2 turnovers there and pretty efficient splits. 55.6 from the field, 45.5 from deep, 75% from the free throw line. If Atlanta can re-establish that defensive identity over the closing 20 games, they might be able to sneak themselves up towards that top 6. But if they don't, then they're going to get stuck in the play-in tournament. Either way, they're now above 500. They've become the mid-team everyone's expected. The Boston Celtics have maintained themselves at a clear 20 games above 500. Second in the conference, a 3-1 weekly record. And the conversation being had right now has nothing to do with the guy on screen. Despite the fact that he's had a really good season defensively, he's had a really good week. He's been a key pinch hitter for the Celtics all year. And somehow online, there seems to be a lot of distrust of Derek White, despite the fact that I think he's one of the better two-way players in this league. 20 points, 3 rebounds, 6.8 assists on the week, 1.3 steals and 1 block. He has the second most blocks of any guard in a single season ever, trailing only Michael Jordan. That's a pretty impressive feat considering MJ is considered one of, if not the best shot blocking guard of all time. Pretty average split from the field at 40%, but making 40% of his threes and perfect from the stripe. The big story right now for Boston, Jason Tatum, imminent return. Some are saying in a matter of days that he will be back. Of course, the cautionary tale is an Achilles tendon tear and back in 10 months. I really hope for his sake it holds up, because I would not want to be responsible for a back-to-back Achilles tendon injury to the greatest Celtics since Larry Bird. We go from one extreme to the other though. The Brooklyn Nets didn't win a game and they sit 30 games below 500. They're 14th in the conference. Their season is done and there's no relevant talking points. Michael Porter Jr. played 4 games this week. 19.5 points, 6 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.3 steals on 2.3 turnovers. Struggled from the field at 41.2. Below average from deep at 33.3. But converted 8 out of 10 from the line. A team that I had all but written off. In fact, I would argue that I had written them off. Went 4-0 this week. They've had a monster return since January. They're now 32-31 overall. They're above 500. They're in the play-in tournament. They're 9th in the conference. That is the Charlotte Hornets, who have been tremendous behind the play of this guy on screen, but also Con Knipple, who has to be very close in the conversation now for Rookie of the Year. I still have Cooper Flag, but again, I'm not mad if you think Con Knipple is the Rookie of the Year. Brandon Miller has really stepped up to me. Brandon Miller is going to be a very smoky outside chance, in my opinion, of being on the edge of that All-NBA selection. That's the kind of run that he's had since January, and he's been really consistent throughout the year. He had another great week in the 4 games he played here. 23.5 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.5 blocks on 3 turnovers, but it's the efficiency from the field, 55.7%, 48.5 from deep, and 90% from the free throw line. He's been one of the leading three-point shooters in the league, along with his teammates in Knipple and Ball, for the last month and a bit, 2 months. and it's been crucial in Charlotte's revival. We'll see whether they can keep the momentum and build on it towards the postseason. And meanwhile, the Chicago Bulls have exceeded expectations in a bad way. They didn't even make the play-in tournament, and now they're 12 games below 500 when your play-in tournament teams are a game ahead of 500. The fortune favouring the brave is one thing, but when you're scared of the dark and don't want to enter into the light, that's another thing. The Bulls, as I said, 1-2 weekly record, 25-37 overall, 12th in the conference. Sexton, their best player this week, 17.3 points, 1.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.3 steals on 3 turnovers, 51.4 from the field, 34.8 from deep, and 85.7 from the free throw line. A team that is turning a lot of heads, comparatively, is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and a lot of it is being turned on the fact that their form has been tremendous since acquiring James Harden. Their form has really improved since their injury stocks changed, and a lot of people right now are seeing the two-way nature of the Cavaliers and going, well, maybe they can be that team we thought they are coming out of the East. And that dynamic of Harden certainly helps, but it shouldn't be the be-all, end-all for a guy that has never, ever performed or stuck his neck out in the postseason. 2-1 weekly record, they're 39-24 overall, 15 above 500, 4th in the conference. Evan Mobley, with 3 games played this week, their most consistent player, and again, a guy who I think is going to get all defensive honours again this year. 19.3 points, 10 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.7 blocks on a turnover. Shot 55.6 from the field, 42.9 from deep, and 60% from the free throw line. And again, he has been a crucial factor in the revival of this team. Early on this year, did not look like the guy who last season I thought should have got an All-NBA nod, a guy who was the Defensive Player of the Year. While he hasn't certainly elevated himself to that height, he has proven what he can do on the defensive end, and that pinch hitting in this scenario offensively is going to be crucial for the team. Cavs are rolling. Let's see what they can do towards the end of March. Speaking of teams that are rolling, you go from someone like Brooklyn, who is 31 games below 31 games below 500, to Detroit, who are 30 games above 500. Like, that is a phenomenal stat to see right now. They are just flying. This is a team that 2 years ago was the worst team in the NBA and one of the worst teams to ever step on a floor. And right now they have a genuine chance of sticking it out. And yeah, there's a good chance that they remain at the very top of the conference for the rest of the year. Jalen Duren, 3 games played this week, massive for him, and don't get me wrong, Cade Cunningham was a beast, but I have to go on the efficiency side of things and certainly the defensive side of things, and it's hard to go past Duren here. 24.3 points, 13.3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, but 1 steal and 1.7 blocks on 1.3 turnovers, shooting 60%. Like, that is a tremendous return for any big man in the league. And I mean any big man, because guys like Jokic have distorted exactly what it means to have a great week. 71.4 from the free throw line. I can accept 7 out of 10 from a big guy. Detroit are rolling. They're holding stead. I can't see them dropping the first seed. As I said, the only thing that worries me is the mental maturation of this team and what they're going to look like in the playoffs. A team that doesn't need to worry about the playoffs is the Indiana Pacers. Didn't win a game this week. They are 32 games below 500. They are last in the East. Jarice Walker, their best player this week. He's been consistent over the last month or so for the Pacers. 18 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 0.3 steals and 0.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. Shot 53.8 from the field, 43.8 from deep, so I actually don't mind the efficiency from the field. 62.5 from the free throw line. Indiana going nowhere fast. To the Miami Heat, 2-1 on the week, 33-29. They are 8th in the conference, and they will be a little nervous if their game doesn't necessarily pick up the way they want it to or deem it should. When you consider where Charlotte sits and the way they're picking up on the offensive end, when you look at the way Atlanta over this last week or so have re-established themselves defensively, you know, for Miami, they need to pick up on both sides of that ball. They're pretty consistent on both sides of the ball, but they're going to have to lift if they're going to maintain that 8th spot and try and deny either of those teams a chance to bounce them in a play-in tournament. Bam Adebayo, their best player this week. 25.3 points, 11.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks on less than a turnover. I really rate that. 49.2 from the field and 40% from deep. Combine that as a big man when he's stretching the floor. I do rate that efficiency. But 57.1 from the free throw line, unacceptable for anyone at any level there. Bam seems to feel that he should be getting an All-NBA nod, or certainly an All-Defensive nod, let alone a Defensive Player of the Year. And I think he's going to make a bit of a case for both. But I don't think putting himself out on a limb after the inconsistent season that he has had, particularly at the start of the year, don't necessarily think it's the wisest brand move for Bam Adebayo. The Milwaukee Bucks, they are 9 games below 500, but they did win a game this week, and when you consider how far back they really are from the play-in tournament, you can pretty much write them off, particularly when you look at the fact that Giannis just hasn't returned at that same player that he was at the start of the year. Bobby Portis, their best player this week, and I think he's been one of the leading six men of the year. I can't discredit Portis and his efforts on the season. 14.3 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 0.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on a turnover. 54.1 from the field, 52.4 from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. Again, the Bucks are absolutely all but done. For me, it's just a matter of guaranteeing the record at this point. The New York Knicks continue to make a run. They are 17 back from 500. Boston 20. They are 17 ahead of 500. Boston are 20 ahead of 500. Really, it's 3 games between second and third, and it's quite a number of games between first and second. So we're sort of starting to really see the top of these conferences play out. There's still a little bit to battle, but you really need results to run your way at this point. For the Knicks, though, they are playing good basketball right now. Had a nice week at 3-1, 40 and 23 overall, as I mentioned, third in the conference. And again, fortunes of the team, they do favour the brave, and the bravest of them all is Jalen Brunson. 23.3 points, 4.4 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 0.5 steals on 2 turnovers. So when you factor in the scoring, when you factor in the assists, the low turnovers, the guys have had a really efficient week and consistently has been the man for this team. I don't need to harp on that anymore. 45.2 from the field, 48% from deep, and 78.9 from the free throw line. The Knicks just need to keep building, and when they feel that pressure bubble building, they can't let it pop, especially this time of year. The Orlando Magic remain 4 games above 500, keeping in mind that right now, 1 game above 500 gets you into a play-in tournament. They're 3-4 games above. They are in the play-in tournament, but their opposition is hot on their heels in Atlanta and certainly Charlotte, who have made a really unlikely run. Still 7th in the conference, though, after a 1-2 week. The Magic, again, they've never found a consistent vein of health and form all year, which is really disappointing, considering I still think you have to give a year to Wagner and Banchero as a duo, get them healthy, and see how they go, particularly with Bane being a complementary piece. He's been really nice this year. He's been really nice this week. 24 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal on a turnover. That's right, 24, 4 and 5 on 1 turnover. To go at 55.8 from the field, 55.6 from deep, and 93.3 from the free throw line. Desmond Bane over the last 3 seasons essentially has just stepped up and said, look, I'm happy to be the man and the leader on this team as we need to. In other circumstances, it certainly wasn't injury related. It was more cultural related and attitude related, but right now it's performance related. So Desmond Bane is really, proof that things can happen. I honestly wish at this point, if he's going to maintain this for another 2-3 years, get him on a contender to tip them over the edge, because he's busting his backside and deserves the reward. Philadelphia sits 6 games above 500. They are not in the play-in tournament. They are in the clear 6th. They've been sitting around 6th for, it seems forever this year. 2-2 weekly record, 34 and 28 overall. If they can maintain their form, we're not going to have to worry about a change, but I certainly wouldn't want to have a slump when these other teams are on the rise. The last thing you need is to get pipped at the post right at the end of the season and find yourself playing extra basketball because, you just couldn't maintain it. Tyrese Maxey, their best player all season, again, their best player this week. He did have some inefficiencies to his game, but continued to produce and get it done at both ends of the floor. Again, I think he's been one of the more underrated defenders because he has had such a superstar appeal on the offensive end this year. 26.8 points, 4.3 rebounds and 6.3 assists certainly lead credence on the offensive end. 2 steals, 1.8 block. We've seen him hound the ball all year. He's been sensational at that there. Only the 1 turnover, but it is the scoring efficiency that does clip him hard. 36.6 from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 90.9 from the free throw line. It's, a game of cat and mouse right now for Philadelphia. They've got injuries that stack up, and then all of a sudden they're healthy again, and then there's 1 or 2 injuries again. Or you've got someone like a Tyrese Maxey who has a week like this. So they just need to find this balance, particularly at the back end of the year. I would say they're pretty tired because they go from old to young. There's no middle ground like a Maxey that's been there for a while. They had that. I wouldn't be too worried about Philadelphia, but their ebb and flow and their see and saw on their form is a concern this deep in the year. The Toronto Raptors are about the only team I could say that would be sitting safe there, 9-10 games above 500 in 5th. They are a real wedgie team right now. If you're above them, if you're beating them, you're a genuine top 4 contender, respectfully, in your conference, and you should be looking at a semi-final berth. If you're not beating them, you're going to have to battle uphill in the postseason. A 1-1 weekly record for the Raptors, 35-26 overall, again, 5th in the conference. Brandon Ingram, as I said, should have been an all-star in my opinion this year, and I believe was picked as a reserve, but I don't think reserve should have been the pick. He should have been just one of the bench players, not a backup, so to speak. 27.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1 steal and 1 block on 2 turnovers. He's able to really chip in where he can. Again, Quickly's had a really good year, and of course Scotty Barnes, one of the leading defenders in the league and one of the best two-way players in the league, has been huge as well. 58.8 from the field, 66.7 from deep, 84.6 from the free throw line. Toronto have shocked a lot of people. I think they've gone further than a lot of people expected. I thought they would have been a play-in tournament. I certainly didn't think they would be pushing potentially for a top 4 spot throughout most of the year. They have certainly exceeded expectations, and I think they're going to keep doing it towards the end of the year. I wouldn't want to be one of those top 4 teams in a bad run in the first round if I ran into Toronto. A team that won't worry about the postseason, though they will not be concerned about it at all, is the below 29 500 0-4 weekly record, 13th in the conference, Washington Wizards. And that pretty much summarises their season. Will Riley was their best player this week. He's been a young guy trying to step up where he can, and that says a lot because they did have some potential here or there. I think the summary of the season, Trae Young, without playing a minute, getting ejected. Says a lot about this team. Will Riley on the week, though, let's focus on him. 14.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.5 steals on 2.3 turnovers, 42.9 from the field, 31.6 from deep, and 78.6 from the free throw line. That's great if you're a rookie and you're like the 4th option on the team. It's not ideal if you're the best player on your team in any given week. Dallas are nearly 20 games below 500. Cooper Flagg's been out for a couple of weeks. He's expected to return sooner rather than later, but they did win a game this week. They're 12th in the conference. They are done as a dog's dinner in the Western Conference. Brandon Williams, their best player this week in the 4 games that he played. 16 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 1.5 turnovers, 43.5 from the field, 37.5 from deep, 77.8 from the free throw line. If there is one positive, it is Cooper Flagg. If there is one negative, it is that Cooper Flagg has been out. Dallas are done. Speaking of teams that I wouldn't say are done, but have certainly slipped up at the wrong time and had some very misfortunate form over the last month or so, that has been the Denver Nuggets. 1-2 weekly record, 38-24 overall. They're now 5th in the conference, and they're a team that, while I do think has to be considered as one of the 3 to come out of the West, because they can still turn it around in the last month, they're not hitting bad form at the right time. This isn't a slump in January. This isn't a slump in December after a good start. This is a team that's getting close to the postseason and has lost its stride. Again, they're still 14 games above 500. They're still 5th in the conference. They're still in the top 6. I would still have them over the Lakers, but that isn't saying much either. Jamal Murray, their best player at the moment, but again, I think they're missing a crucial edge defensively that's going to cost them, as I've flagged before. You can make a case that Jokic has been their best defender this year, and I don't think you can win a title if Jokic is out and out your best defender. Jamal Murray, nice week on the offensive end. 36.3 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks. 4 turnovers, leaving a little to be desired, but 50.7 from the field, 53.1 from deep, and 82.8 from the free throw line. He has had his best year ever. The only issue is defensively Denver have not, and I think that's going to be their concern. The Golden State Warriors, 0-2 weekly record, 31-30 overall, 8th in the conference, with teams in the plane that are hot on their heels, particularly a Clippers team that has managed to find form, as we said, after a terrible start to the year. And right now the Warriors don't look like they're going to compete, despite the fact they're in a play-in tournament situation. There's a lot of conversation around what this team needs to do. What they need to do is try and make the most of Steph Curry one more time, and I don't care whether you have to move heaven and earth for it. You have to reward a franchise player that has delivered essentially the history and legacy of your franchise in a championship format, outside of one ring. Like, the relevancy of your club in the last 50 years has come down to this man. Brandon Podziemski, the best player this week, 2 games played, 15.5 points, 7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 0.5 steals and 1.5 turnovers, 43.3 from the field, 25% from deep and 50% from the free throw line. I think Podziemski would be a guy that would go to a Chicago and be a star player, but there's a reason that he rides the pine on a team that's trying to contend, because when he does become the star like this, it's the kind of production that you get. The Houston Rockets keep winning games even after the concerns of Kevin Durant's burner accounts and opinions on teammates. While there are concerns about true ball handler right now, and there are concerns about how you get certain guys open who aren't great ball in hand, there's one guy who is great ball in hand, and that is Kevin Durant. And he has been dominating. He has been an MVP caliber candidate all season, and you would have to think that he's going to be an all-NBA selection somewhere along the line, whether that's second or third team this year. He has been sensational. And along with guys like Şengün, and obviously Reed Shepherd's had a really breakout year as well. Armin Thompson still playing really good basketball. Tari Easton still playing good basketball. They've had their moments, but Kevin Durant clearly the catalyst for this team. And with a week like this, it's very hard to deny. 34 points, 6.7 rebounds, 4 assists a game to go, 0.7 steals and a block on 3 turnovers. 54% overall from the field, despite shooting under 30% from deep, and perfect from the free throw line. Houston sitting in that top 3 right now. They are setting the expectation that they would like to be a conference semi-finalist. That is the expectation I set them at the start of the year. Their matchup right now would be the Lakers, and I would not want to be Los Angeles if you had to guard Kevin Durant right now, because nobody would be able to guard Kevin Durant. Here are the Clippers, 30-31 after a 3-1 weekly record. Again, they're getting towards that 500. They're starting to push the issue with Golden State. And the fact that I've got right now, when you look at those teams in that playing position in the NBA right now, particularly in the West, Kawhi Leonard is the guy in the postseason I would want if he's healthy. He's the X factor of this Clippers team, and don't be wrong here. Benedict Mathurin has been huge in his return as well. He's been massive off the bench and providing pinch-hitting minutes. The only thing that I do have a question about is the Clippers media department, and why you somehow still haven't updated Benedict Mathurin's photo, and why is he wearing an Indiana Pacers jersey still. But nonetheless, the Clippers, a 3-1 weekly record, 30-31 overall, 9th in the conference. They are hot on the heels of Golden State in 8th position. Phoenix about the only team that would be safe in that 7, might be able to slip up to the 6th if the Lakers have a bad form. But I would still back Phoenix to win their matchup if they were there. Mathurin, nonetheless, 4 games played, 15.8 points, 6.5 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.8 steals and 0.8 blocks on 3 turnovers. The efficiency from the field is mind-boggling. To still shoot 43% from the field while shooting under 10% from deep in the modern game doesn't make much sense, but they're doing it. An 81.8 from the free throw line again. The Clippers in the play-in tournament for me will have the X factor, and that X factor is Kawhi Leonard. Over the Lakers, who have certainly rebounded in the last week, a 3-1 weekly record, 37-24 overall, 6th in the conference. Denver are starting to slip, which will put a bit of pressure on the Nuggets. But if I'm Los Angeles, I'm also looking at the way my team's playing comparatively to Minnesota, to Houston, to San Antonio and Oklahoma City, and I'm not looking at a contender here. I'm looking at a first-round team. And if I'm the Lakers, I'm awfully concerned about that with the money and the time that you're investing into this squad. Luka still with a big week, and that's a big factor here. Look at the efficiency of this week from Luka and the more than average contributions he's put on the defensive end, albeit he's still whinging. I'm not saying he's a good defender. I'm not saying that by any means, but his effort was clearly better this week. When you look at the efficiency, this Lakers team looks better. 30.5 points, 7.3 rebounds, 8 assists, so a rounded 31, 7 and 8. 1 steal and 0.8 blocks, 3.5 turnovers with Luka's ball usage. That's not bad. Factoring in 53.9 from the field, 44.7 from deep, and 82.1 from the free throw line. That's where the Lakers are going to win games. That's what's going to be crucial when their leader is having effective games. This is probably the most effective month that Luka's had or a week he's had since January, since the start of the new year. So you have to factor that in as to why their performance has been so sound, but you've got to get that consistently, because the other guy that's partnering with him no longer is going to get that consistently. The Memphis Grizzlies are 15 below 500, a 2-2 weekly record. They are done. They will not catch anybody in the play-in tournament. Jalen Wells, their best player this week in the 4 games that he played, 18.3 points, 2.8 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 0.8 turnovers. So I like the contributions there from the young fella, particularly like the efficiency from the field at 58.7 and 54.5. respectively from deep, 70% from the free throw line. Look, I'd like to see it greater, but I can understand it. Again, the only concern I have here is that if that is your number one option, what is the rest of your team doing? Minnesota, they have juiced up very, very nicely. An efficient week from Anthony Edwards on both sides of the ball. An effective week defensively, above average effective defensive week for Minnesota, who have somewhat dropped a little bit this year. Still a top 10 defense, but have certainly dropped from the standards that they have set. Undefeated on the week. They're now 39-23, so they are 16 above 500. They're starting to make a bit of a break towards the semi-finals. I mentioned this is a team that times their run, and they are now top 4 in the West. Anthony Edwards having a sensational year. He's going to be an All-NBA second-team selection in my book at this stage. and has been in the MVP conversation for the last couple of months. 31 points, 4 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 2.3 steals and a block on 2.3 turnovers. 50% from the field, 42.9 from deep, 75% from the free throw line. If every player's lead guard was able to do this, your teams would be looking a hell of a lot better. Anthony Edwards is starting to try and find a bit more consistency in his game. Again, he has taken away from attacking the rim over the last couple of years, but it has diversified his offensive game when he is able to take the most of it. And defensively, we know he gives effort. Some nights he gives more than others, and when he does, they're the kind of results you get. So a big week from Ant, a nice leading effort there for Minnesota, who now have their sights on a semi-finals berth, which is a hell of a lot more than New Orleans, who sit 25 games below 500. Had a so-so week and are 13th in the conference. Sadiq Bey, their best player this week, and he has had some really nice weeks this year. Sadiq Bey, it's just a shame he hasn't, and guys like Trey Murphy, but they just haven't had the consistent support that they need, which is, pretty concerning when you consider things. 4 games played, 24.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1 steal on 2 turnovers, 50% from the field, 38.7 from deep, and 80% from the free throw line. There is a conversation about guys have to get numbers in bad teams, but there's something about Sadiq Bey and Trey Murphy who are consistently getting these numbers. They're not having off games, on and off games. That they're having consistent games, and that is a big factor in what's going to value them. Now, Deontay Murray back next year. What does that look like? Can you get some health out of Zion Williamson? Maybe, but you've got some other guys who are just not getting minutes that should be. So I do worry about New Orleans. I didn't think I'd speak this long on a team that is so sub, but you've got guys that can perform. You've got a guy coming back from injury. Maybe there's something you can do. But again, as usual, the conversation is also back round to the fact that Zion Williamson is eating too much. I eat too much. I'm also not expected to play for almost $50 million a year in the NBA. Oklahoma City have started to steady the ship a little bit here. A 4-0 weekly record for them, 49-15 overall once again. And if they're able to find a little more health, a little more consistency, and they keep that physical nature to their game, then there's no reason why they can't still consider them back-to-back. There have been some conversations around OKC. Yeah, sure, they do get a friendly whistle. They do get away with a little bit physically. And I think that all comes down to the fact that there are a lot of championship teams that have ever had this. This shouldn't be anything new or shocking, but we seem to find a shock point and a shock value out of it every year. That's the cycle of the NBA, has been for ages. You just have to put up with it in the end. A guy who has been having a really good year, he was an all-star, and I think he probably deserves an all-defensive nod somewhere along the line. Chet Holmgren, 4 games played this week, 18.5 points, 12.3 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.8 steals and 1.8 blocks on 2 turnovers, 54.9 from the field, 40% from deep, 71.4 from the free throw line again. Oklahoma City go undefeated. They're now pushing towards 35 games above 500. There's still a chance to win 60 games. Can they have a magical run and get to 65 as I thought they would? I don't know. 49-15 compared to how the team has been talked about over the last month and a bit. Still pretty good off a hot run. I still think Oklahoma City are the team to beat. I am concerned about the injuries, but did they have those injuries at the right time? We'll see. The Phoenix Suns remain 5 games above 500, 9 games above 500, I should say, a 2-0 weekly record, and comparatively would be sitting 5th in the Eastern Conference. Again, they're the only team I'm comfortable with in the play-in tournament situation right now in the West that I feel will get through comfortably, and a team that I feel would, make some noise in the first round. I don't think they would get past the first round, but I think they've been consistent enough this year to show it. They've already surpassed their mark of what I thought they would be. I thought they'd be a bottom 5 team, and they certainly have improved on last year's record. There's no doubt about that. Colin Gillespie, in the 2 games played for him this week, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 0.5 steals and 0.5 blocks on 2 turnovers. It was a really rounded week there for the Suns. And again, you can really notice that comparatively. I mean, 2-0 record and your best player has averaged 19 is a lot different to 1-1 and your best player averaged 15 on 30%. Like, it's not hard to read the room, ladies and gentlemen. 56.5 from the field, 57.9 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. Again, there's your efficiency, getting it done with limited touches, which is exactly what you need. I think Phoenix is sitting okay. They might be able to push ahead if they can. I mean, the Lakers are right now the Lakers are the team that are 14 above, so there is quite a gap between 6th and 7th. But if the Lakers were to, start to fall and the Suns were to start winning games, that becomes a little more interesting. Again, I think I'm the only team I'm comfortable with in any playing situation right now in the entire league is Phoenix, remaining in 7th. The Trailblazers, they still remain 3 games above 500. This is a team that fought tooth and nail to get to 500, and then everybody else out of the play-in tournament went 6 games above. they've started to slip and solve the opposition, and now they've got to try and find some form back. It'll be interesting to see whether they're able to do that. A 2-2 weekly record for the Blazers, as I said, 3 games below 500, 30 and 33. 10th in the conference. Drew Holiday has been back for a few weeks now, but he's starting to find some form once again. 4 games played, 23.3 points, 4.8 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.3 steals on 3.5 turnovers. It'll be interesting to see how he gels next year with a team that's going to have a bit more health to them, particularly if Damian Lillard is going to return. 53% from the field, 43.8 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. That's the typical Holiday that we've known for most of his career. The guy that was the all-star some 13, 14 years ago. The guy that was the, leader on the perimeter for not only Boston defensively, but certainly Milwaukee defensively in their championship runs. He's been a constant. He's been a consistent. He's a guy that probably gets close to a Hall of Fame nod eventually somewhere down the line. That's the kind of level that we've seen from Drew Holiday for most of his career. A team that's not going to go in the Hall of Fame, though, that's the Sacramento Kings, who, outside of their relevant season, 3 years ago, haven't done anything since, and have capitulated to the point where they've got old guys on bad contracts and young guys with no mentors. Old guys, bad contracts, young guys, no mentors. That is a recipe for disaster. A 1-2 weekly record, 14 and 49 overall. They're dead last in the West. Maxime Reynaud, 3 games played, 20 points, 9.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1 steal, 0.3 blocks with 3 turnovers, 74.3% from the field. That is tremendous. Didn't make a 3, and 88.9 from the free throw line. But again, old guys, bad contracts, young guys, no mentors, and a superstar who's not on the court. That is a recipe for disaster. The Spurs are not a recipe for disaster, though. They are seeing limited possessions and even limited minutes with Victor Wembanyama. He's still remaining their best player. Everyone's firing on all cylinders. If this is a tactic by Coach Mitch Johnson to keep him healthy and ready to go in the postseason, I have no issues with it. I still think he's going to be a top 10 MVP candidate. I still think he's going to be an All-NBA selection. And I still think he's the Defensive Player of the Year. Now, if he starts to fire up, we're talking about a young guy who in 4 years essentially should have 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards. In 3 years, should have 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, or 3 years, I should say. Should have 2 DPOY awards, should have a Rookie of the Year. We'll have a Finals MVP. We'll have an All-NBA selection. Good luck trying to contain that. Retire today is a Hall of Famer. Scary thought for such a short period, but retire today is a Hall of Famer. Had a big week, Wemby. 2-1 weekly record for the Spurs. 44 and 17 overall. 2nd in the conference. They are still a chance to win 60 games. They're going to finish high 50s, but they're a chance to win 60. It's a scary thought for this young Spurs team. And I mean young Spurs team. Wemby on the week, 3 games played, 15.7 points, 9.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.7 steals, and 4 blocks a game. So even when you factor in the inefficient 3.7 turnovers, when you factor in the inefficient scoring from the field at 45.2% and 16.7 from deep, full credit to his teammates. There's no doubt about it. Guys like Champagny, guys like Castle, guys like Harper have been huge all year. But in limited touches, this is what Victor Wembanyama's doing. And if they're preserving him to make sure that he's right to go in the playoffs, that's cause for concern if you're the opposition. But a team with no cause for concern against the opposition is the Utah Jazz. They are 18 and 44. They didn't win a game this week, and they are 14th in the West. Ace Bailey with another week. It's probably the best way to put it. He has had a nice rookie season, and I think he's going to be one of the rookies throughout the next few years. I think this rookie class is as deep as anything that we've had in a number of years. But again, didn't win a game. They're almost 30 games below 500. They're not doing anything of any importance moving forward. 16.5 points for Ace Bailey to go with 4.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1 steal and 1 block on 1.5 turnovers. 38.1 from the field, 34.6 from deep, 100% from the free throw line. And that wraps it up, ladies and gentlemen. That has been my review for Week 18 of the 25-26 NBA season. As you can see, there are some guys and some teams that are making a run, that are getting things done. There are some teams that are starting to ruffle some feathers and just might make it at the right time. Others are slipping and falling over when it shouldn't happen. And then, unfortunately, we've got a lot of cellar dwellers, whether they've forced themselves there, whether they're there through injury. It doesn't matter. They're there. It's not healthy. It's not a great look. I mean, we're realistically saying the Eastern Conference top 10 is sorted, let alone the top 8. And we're essentially saying the top 7 in the West is sorted. Still some competitiveness there as far as who's going to seed around it, but ultimately we already have 10 teams that have absolutely no impact or matter whatsoever this season, beyond a couple of guys performing out of their skin. That is it. And that'll start to narrow very quickly, because you look at the other end of it, we're talking about a top 4 in both conferences realistically making up the depth of the playoffs. Now, I'm not a genius, but when 12 teams are already irrelevant, that's a little bit concerning for the league. That's, as much as the tankings are concerned, I think that's a concern for the league. You can make a case that only 8 teams are really relevant to the title contention right now. 2/3 of your league are not. Something the league probably wants to look at. But I still think there's plenty to unfold, and I think some of these teams that are, trying to rise up a little bit are going to cause a bit of a concern. That might change the dynamic. But realistically, we're 5 weeks away from the season being over, and we've narrowed it down to 8 teams. And even then, you're realistically looking at 3 that could probably win the title. We'll see how the NBA wants to approach it. Anyway, guys, that's been me. It's been my review for Week 18 of the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.